since its founding. And it followed the 32nd General Congregation documents that the Jesuits prepared, calling for the pursuit of social justice and the day-by-day action to deconstruct the structural sources of injustice. And they, in the documents, said that this was of equal requirement of a Catholic priest, equal to the preaching of the Mass each day. And Billy reached out to me. I was at Harvard Divinity School, already having finished college and law school, and was out working in the world, being fired from one law firm after another, and being told that they had come to the conclusion fairly quickly that the interests of their clients and I were not the same. And it turns out that Billy was the best client and best friend I ever had, because in fact all of my interests were exactly the same as his. So we spent many years together on Native American reservations, fighting for the American Sanctuary Movement people, fighting to close down the construction of all private nuclear power plants in the Silkwood case, and that's where Sarah came together and joined the team with Billy and I, and we fought together down in Greensboro, North Carolina, to prosecute the Ku Klux Klan, the American Nazi Party, that gunned down all the labor demonstrators and organizers down there. They were trying to organize a chapter of the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers and organize black and white people together on an equal basis, and were confronted by the Klan, who gunned them down on the streets of Greensboro. And we went in and did the investigation and convicted them under the Federal Civil Rights Act for that. And down into the deep delta of Mississippi, where we represented the first elected black mayor in the deep delta of Mississippi since the Reconstruction. Actually, 50 miles south of where Schwerner and Cheney were found buried down in Mississippi. And Billy always remained extremely humorous through the entire process. Convinced that we were right, and convinced that, as he often said, nobody gets out of life alive. So whenever we got into those kind of situations where they were life-threatening, I know that Dagan, our younger son, took his very first steps in a farmhouse down in the deep Mississippi Delta with the Ku Klux Klan, driving their cars around and around and around the house in the nighttime, flashing their lights on and off. And that was where Dagan took his very first steps. And Billy was and is the godfather for Danny Paul, our older boy. Billy Davis and Bill Callahan from the Quixote Center did the memorial mass for Orlando Letelier when he was blown up and killed, murdered on the streets of Washington, D.C. And they celebrated the mass together, the funeral mass, with Joan Baez singing Ave Maria. And we've been a lot of places together down through the years. And Billy here in this room, the last thing he ever said to me was, he looked up and said, Danny, I'm dying. There's a lot of other things I'd rather be doing. And those were his last words to me. And he's doing those other things now. It's interesting. It was never, like all Jesuits, was never entirely clear what he believed. he knew that what all the doctrines were, and he knew what the Committee on Orthodoxy taught, but he knew in his heart what was to be done. And fortunately, we had Pedro Arrupe as our superior. And Pedro Arrupe was an aggressive anti-fascist all the way back in the 30s. He was a medical doctor, a surgeon, became a Jesuit priest, and used to preach from the pulpit in opposition to Franco and to Hitler and to Mussolini. And he was a good friend of Billy's and really liked Billy because he knew that Billy got it. He got what Arrupe was trying to get all the Jesuits to follow. I remember sitting in a big meeting with Pedro and Billy with all the 10 provincials for the state of the United States, and we were out in St. Louis, and Pedro Arrupe said, he said, he said, when I come to talk to you, the provincials here in America, he said, reminds me very much of when I spoke to the American Manufacturers Association. He said, you are always worrying. Yes, I want to do the right thing, but what about our profit margin? And so he was very supportive of everything that we ever did. Billy guided us through at the headquarters, returning huge pieces of land from the Jesuit order to the native communities in different parts of the country. He shepherded through getting all 10 of the provincials to agree that the mere possession of nuclear weapons was a mortal sin because they were intrinsically designed to destroy civilian populations, which was a complete violation of the just war theory. He was able to get through the resolution, which was later adopted by the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops and the National Board of Homeland Ministries of the Methodist Church, condemning capitalism as inherently sinful, and condemned Soviet communism as inherently sinful because of the way that it had been transmuted from the original ideals of genuine socialism. And that's no small task for a person to have achieved, and Billy did that. And also invited women to come into our office at the Jesuit headquarters, which Brother Babinski found very distressing. And Sarah was leading Sarah was the National Labor Secretary for the National Organization for Women, and invited Billy and I to come on board to help do the investigation of the murder of Karen Silkwood. We came on board and did that case together, and won the $10.5 million judgment against the Kerr-McGee Nuclear Corporation, the largest civil judgment in the history of the United States as of that point in time. And that was when the Jesuit office asked if we might be happier somewhere else. We said we were fine, and so Dom Totoro and Marie Totoro inherited this little cobbler shop that their family had owned, and their father passed away and left the cobbler shop to them. And they weren't able to own property at the time because of their vows, and so they gave it to the Christic Institute. So we had this little cobbler shop at the foot of Capitol Hill, where we did our social ministry work from. We got Father Wally Kozabowski, a Franciscan Capuchin, who I taught at Antioch Law School, taught him constitutional law. We dug out the entire basement and built this huge war room down in the basement, and proceeded to establish the Christic Institute. And for 20 years, waged peace on the national security state. And that's Billy Davis. Billy Davis never gave up on that, stayed true to that mission all the way to the very end. And I'm sure now, he, as a Jesuit, I'm sure he was surprised to find out how much of what the Catholic Church had taught turns out to be true. About the state of consciousness that one moves into, the type of survey of one's life that takes place in this Bardo period that he's in now for these 40 days. He's passing through those different phases now. He's with us, each of us, intimately. He will help us. He will share his larger vision now with us when we call upon it. He is our friend. And so that I ask all to not mourn Billy Davis. Billy Davis is happy. He is with all of his family and the many people who have died for justice. And he will help us carry on. So do not hesitate to talk to Billy, to open your heart to Billy, and to ask him for assistance in those moments where you need some help from above. Because that's where he is now. So I don't sing. So there you go.